And thank you for coming today. My name is Norma. I'm part of the Gutierrez group, and we appreciate you guys being here. And I just want XP Global and principal at hoo.global Consulting, and he invests all over the world, and I'm sure he'll be happy to tell us all about that. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Spencer Hoo. Come on up.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. So I'm happy to be here to speak today. I'm always happy to talk about the topic. It's one of my passions. So definitely that always helps. By raise of hand, how many are agents and brokers in the room? Let's have a few. And then how many do own investment property in the US? And anyone already own property globally? Okay, great. So good audience today. So I will go ahead do a quick introduction. So I was licensed probably about 20 years ago. So I am a licensed agent. I do sales locally here in Orange County, Los Angeles, and the Empire. I call that the bread and butter. So it kind of supports what we do globally, which from time to time it could be slow depending on market conditions. But recently, and because of COVID, it actually increased a lot of the global activity. As mentioned, I am an agent with EXP Global. EXP is in 23 countries now. Mexico is one of them, so that was one of the reasons I moved over. I do run Global Consulting, which we mainly do a lot of product marketing, project marketing to our partners outside of the US. So in the beginning, that was mainly when we were working with Chinese buyers and investors coming over here to the US to purchase. And anyone that was in Southern California, our team basically serviced. Anyone that was not Southern California, we actually built a pretty large referral database and sent them over. Chinese purchased everywhere, which was kind of cool. That dried up actually probably about 2 years before COVID started. So we kind of said, pulling hair, going, uh-oh, what do we do? Because we were pretty much invested 100% in basically working the China market. So we were asking, okay, we want to stay global still. What do we do? So we figured out, where are the people in the US buying outside of the US? So right now we do have a heavy focus in Latin America. Of course, Mexico is one of those locations. I've spoken all over the place.
Again, primarily because of how involved I was with China, I would very frequently get invited by local realtor associations to kind of talk about how to market our listings here in the US to their buyers in China or to the partners in China. And I actually got to train a lot of brokerages also. So I was previously with REMAX, which is probably the largest real estate brokerage by footprint. So they were in over 120 countries, so very, very large. I got to train Coldwell Banker at one point also. For those that are real estate professionals, we do have a group called Real Estate Pros Without Borders on Facebook. So definitely feel free to join that. We do share basically anything global related events that are either here in Southern California or anyone else. We have 2,300. Actually, no, we have 2,500 members. And we started that at the beginning of COVID. So that grew pretty big. We were named in the Riz Media Real Estate Newsletter, which is pretty cool. And then coming out later this year, I'm actually co-writing a book. So anyone that's interested, email me. I'll put you on that email list. So when it comes out, you guys will be notified. And we'll probably be giving out several free copies as well. So anyone that is interested, and I'll be a more hands-on book. So before we begin the actual presentation with a lot of information, so hopefully you guys are ready to take notes, my journey to invest outside the US began. So how many from something you can buy? Light bulb moment that went on. So who can name where this is? No one? Aw, no fun. Asia. So we were there, I believe, say 2015 or 2016, and we kind of fell in love with it. And one is, you can see it's very picturesque. There's a lot of beaches, there's a lot of nature, there's a lot of culture. It is Asia, so unfortunately it's a 16-hour flight with a connection somewhere, so very far, unfortunately. And that you're going to invest in something. How is access? So this is one of the reasons we didn't invest here. But the reason that light bulb moment happened, and I just chose a random photo off Google, but there's tons of these. So you can purchase a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom, fairly new, so probably 10 to 15 years, maybe newer, with a private pool and a piece of land. 1,000 at that time. Well, moment, ooh, that's cheap. What can you buy 200,000 here in California or in Orange County right now? Probably a parking space somewhere, right? So big light bulb moment. Those were probably anywhere from 800 square feet to 1,000 square feet. 200,000 US. So the other reason we decided not to explore Bali and actually all of Southeast Asia for that reason, even though those are very good options, that's a very specific investor, you don't own the land, unfortunately. You have a land lease. So those of us that come from the US, we're very, very used to fee simple. We own the land. We own the land forever, as long as we pay property tax. For these areas, they don't have that concept, unfortunately. I'm Chinese ethnically, China. Everything is a 70-year land lease. They don't own the land. That's why so many Chinese came here to the US to purchase, to other countries to purchase, because you can own land. And you can buy a yard and you own that yard instead of buying a villa year written contract saying you have exclusive use to it. So that was one of the reasons. So this is going to be even trickier. So would you believe it if I said this is in China? So this is China. So there's a very cool area, very unique area in China, island, and that's off of Guangzhou. And it's pretty much connected by a road that has a train system going under it. So you can get there by train or by driving. So it is technically a real island. It's called the Hawaii of China. So in the winter, everyone in northeastern China, which is what borders North Korea and Russia, very, very cold. The air very, very thick. The older people, they have problems breathing. A big chunk, they travel to Hainan Island. So this is the southern tip of Hainan Island called Sanya. And that was our first international purchase. This was, I forget when, but that was our first purchase. There were some complexities because as a foreigner, you cannot purchase in China. So we had to do it very tricky way. So I'm not advising you guys try this. Because we are Chinese, we have relatives in China. So basically it's a partnership with a relative. So that basically was about a 5-minute drive to the main beach, which is this, Sanya Beach, along the strip somewhere. And we purchased that probably, I want to say about 250,000 financed. So because it was under a relative's name, they could finance. Under our name, we can't purchase, we can't finance, we can't do anything. So off the table. China, very tricky market. And right now, China's off anything. Don't think China, because China's a very depressed economy right now. But when we did that, within 18 months, year and a half, property doubled. It was worth about 500,000. Part of that is because China, that's just normal. You're not looking at cash flow from rent. You're looking at appreciation, and it appreciates fast. You'll get maybe 3x of your purchase price within a 10-year period. So a lot of buyers in China, they purchase properties, and they don't rent it out because they don't want to deal with tenants. They don't want to deal with maintenance. They don't want to deal with anything. So it's an empty shell. And by the time, whatever that time is, they sell it at a 3x, 4x. So that's China. So any questions before I begin the formal presentation on kind of how we started? That's kind of how we started, and we ended up concentrating Mexico now. Okay, no questions. So before we jump in even further, I want to highlight the two terms, international and global. They are different. A lot of people use them interchangeably. They are different. International means one country dealing with one other country. That's the extent, that's the limit, that's the restriction, nothing beyond that. Global, on the other hand, can be one country dealing with a lot of countries. Can be a lot of countries dealing with a lot of countries. So we always want to think of everything in a global mindset and start using the word global if it pertains to what you're talking about. So what are the main reasons that someone would even consider purchasing outside of the US? So we mentioned earlier already, everyone likes a vacation. If you go vacation somewhere, you go repeatedly, maybe within a 10-year gap, you go two, three times. Every year you go once, you go multiple times, whatever the case might be. You want a vacation there, so you buy something. So that's going to be a vacation home. And that is the #1 reason most people will be looking to purchase somewhere. And they will have that comfort level because they've been there in person. They know what it is. They know why they like it. The second is investment. So we're all in the room, hopefully investors. So we want to make money on whatever we purchase, whether that is cash flow from rents or from the appreciation at some point, or even better, from both sides of it, the blended return. The third is as a second home. So a lot of people, if they have the capability, and right now, because a lot of people can work virtually, they don't have to be in a certain location at all times of the year. So they might have a second home. So you live in California for half the year, you go somewhere else exotic and on the beach the other half of the year. And then lastly, those that just want to retire somewhere cool. Maybe they want to buy it now, and maybe 10 years or 15 years or whatever the case is, they're going to retire. They want to have something ready. They don't want to think about it at that time. And maybe the prices will do this, and it's not attainable anymore. So they're getting it ready today. And cost of living, definitely, most locations will be cheaper than the US. And then, of course, if you can get a multiple of all 4 of these, or all 4 of them to actually classify for it, why not? So we kind of mentioned some of these items already. So lifestyle, so they want to go somewhere cool. It's better healthcare, it's better weather, it's a beach or coastal. Although here in Orange County, we're only 30 minutes away from a beach, so that's not going to be the main thing. But if you are buying where we purchased in Mexico, it's the Caribbean Ocean. So it's not the same Pacific Ocean, different ocean. So definitely a difference. Some people basically purchase because they have better education opportunities for their children. So a lot of our buyers from China, they purchase here in the US because they have better access to schools and education. In China, they wouldn't have the same access to that level of education. We mentioned already investment. So whether it's a capital gain or a rental income. So by show of hands, how many of you are more concerned with a rental income cash flow? And how many would be more concerned with making something huge as a back end when you sell it? Okay, so there's a mix. And then, of course, there's those that want to do both. And then, of course, there's risk mitigation or diversification. So for instance, and I'll use China as an example before, China, they don't want to leave all their money in China for the reason that they're stuck right now. They're starting to open up a little bit, but for the past 3 years straight, almost, a lot of places, they couldn't even leave their home without a permit. They couldn't go to work without a permit. They couldn't go to the next province or state over or city over without a permit. So how many people want to stay somewhere that you are that restricted? So a lot of Chinese, fortunately, they made decisions earlier, and they basically have purchased in the US already. So the same concept. So us here in the US, what happens if our stock market crashes and all our money is in the stock market? Uh-oh, there goes the retirement. So potentially investing in real estate locally, real estate globally, a mix, definitely it balances it out. So if something wacky were to happen, you're not going to be turned upside down. So the main kind of concepts that most of us would be looking when we are going to purchase something, and these are all different types of strategies, or you can combine them. The first one basically is pre-sale. So a lot of properties outside the US, they're sold on pre-sale, meaning the developer has the land acquired already, so they own it. Unlike a lot of anyone that's familiar with EB5, a lot of EB5 projects were marketed without them even owning the land. These basically, they own the land, they're already entitled. They basically start the sales process about 3 or 2 years before the delivery date. So in Mexico specifically, they don't have a lot of commercial financing or construction financing. So what happens is they're using a lot of the buyer's deposits. Once it gets to a certain amount, that's a milestone. They can basically build something, get to the next milestone. So buying in pre-sale, usually the price is going to be a little bit lower than what that target price is. So to give an example, the target price, if it was pretty much close to delivery, is $300,000. If you go in 3 years before it's going to deliver, right when they open the first round, which is usually called friends and family, it's not open to public usually, so it's only special brokers and then past clients that have access to that. You can get the property maybe at maybe 200, 220, 250,000. Because they know in between the phases, they're increasing that price. And the market is slowly increasing as well. So very similar to how Toll Brothers, a KB, a Lennar here in the US, whatever they're selling, they're building a chunk of them. And then the next phase, once it's built and ordered, they're raising it by 5%, 8%, whatever the amount is. So they're kind of building that in. So usually when you're purchasing in pre-sale, you can expect to get an equity gain anywhere from maybe 10% to 20% per year if it's a reputable developer that knows what they're doing. The second, they label as capital gains. That's what we call appreciation, but same word, different usage. So every year you will get appreciation. So it's very similar here to US, that homes appreciate. Other areas in the world, if you're looking, Japan specifically, and we've researched Japan over and over and over, we still haven't figured out how to do it. Japan, the properties don't appreciate. They either do that or they do that. So unless you're purchasing something at a distressed price to begin with, don't think about making money when you sell. Better have a very good plan as far as cash flow, whether that's short-term rental, mid-term rental, long-term rental, rehabbing and flipping, whatever the case is, but you better have a good plan. We already talked about it, the cash flow. Yeah, go ahead.
How is Japan with cash flow? So if you're not counting on appreciation, but you want to diversify,
Yeah.
you want to invest internationally?
I wouldn't do it unless you plan on visiting a lot, put it that way. The numbers, depending where specifically it's located, so if it is in a central urban core, so one of the main newer areas of downtown Tokyo, for instance, maybe 4%, not that high. If you're kind of a little bit in the outskirts of newer developing areas, where you can probably pick something up a little bit cheaper, potentially up to 10% range, 12%, but still, you don't have any appreciation on the back end. You can only depend on that cash flow. You can't, depends. But it's very beautiful in Japan. It's one of our favorite places. So back to that, you'll have basically the rental return on income or return on investment. So again, very important, and that goes with the question that was just asked. What is that rate of return on the amount that you invest? So in Mexico, the specific areas that we target right now is basically Yucatan Peninsula, which we'll show in a map later. You have very high occupancy rates. If you have high occupancy rates and your nightly rates are on par, you basically have pretty high return on investment. So most of the places you can get very easily anywhere from 6 to 15% return. So it depends, of course, on location. A play on exchange rate. So a lot of people have basically compared purchasing global real estate as basically investing in currency, because some places you need to basically convert your currency in order to purchase. China purchasing in US, they had to convert their money to dollars. If the exchange rate was not good, they might have lost 5% just on that. Luckily for us, in Mexico, a lot of the properties are dollarized, meaning they are on dollar system. Doesn't mean that's better or worse, just means that's how it is. But to give an example, 2020, when COVID first started, the first couple weeks of that, exchange rate for pesos, it usually is $1 gets you 19 to 20 pesos. 1 to $1 gets you 25 pesos. You're making more money if you're doing an exchange at that point. And we actually took advantage of that. So our condo, the first one we purchased, basically was a dollarized contract. But the furniture package, because it was a hotel condo, that was in pesos. And if we were using the 1 to 19 exchange rate, that would have been close to $20,000 for furniture. At a 1 to 24, which we ended up doing that exchange, was closer to 15,000. So we saved 5,000 just on exchange rate. So imagine if your entire condo was priced in pesos at that point, and you basically did that exchange and did it. You just saved 15, 20, 25% of your purchase price right away. So I'm no expert on foreign exchange, but anyone that is, there's an avenue to explore. And then there's tax advantages depending what you're trying to do, of course. Purchase price was a payment is usually going to be 30%, so 30,000. And if you are able to strike a very, very good deal with the developer, you don't have to pay anything in between, so no payment plan, meaning you pay the balance, the rest of the 70% at closing. But what happens if you don't want to close? You're trying to flip your position. You can do this. So you're basically leveraged 70,000 of that. And by the time the condo project completes, that 100,000 unit is now selling the last couple of units at 135. You made 35,000 on the 30 you actually have invested. So you made 116% return. So some projects you are able to get them to add in an assignment clause. A lot of them don't like it because they know a lot of people are doing this and they want to do it themselves. So, but some of them, if they are kind of wanting to get that last unit in that phase sold, you can kind of tweak that stuff. So get an assignment clause. So for the Americans, what are the most popular travel destinations? And you can see by far, that's Mexico. And that's what we researched, and that's why we're concentrating on Mexico. And Canada's number 2. But then, fun fact, for Canada, US is the number 1 location, Mexico is number 2 location. So for Canadians, Mexico is also very relevant. There's a website called internationalliving.com. So if you want to take a note on that. So they basically track a lot of different metrics as far as how much is cost of living, how's the healthcare, how's the school system, how's this, how's that. And the next graphic somewhere on here has that. And they'll basically rank what are the best places to retire. And this very, very, very heavily impacts where people purchase because, again, they might want to retire at some point. So this is from the 2021 numbers. So number 1 is Costa Rica, and we'll touch a little bit on it. Number 2 is Panama. Number 3 is Mexico. All Latin America. Colombia, Ecuador, also Latin America. And then you see Portugal, number 5. Number 1 location in Europe, Portugal. So here are the specific metrics. So housing, which is housing costs, benefits, the visa residency, entertainment, how developed the country is, climate and weather, healthcare, governance, opportunity, cost of living, and then everything averaged out. So that's basically what they're using to kind of do that ranking. Cost of living, very important. So when we retire, I think hopefully most of us want to retire at some point. We need to figure out how are we going to pay for the rest of our retirement. You can see Canada and US, very, very dark pink, very expensive areas. Doesn't mean every location is, but on average, yes. You see Mexico towards the green, light green, so towards the cheaper side of it. And you can see a lot of Latin America, also that kind of dark green, which is super cheap, or kind of that yellowish green, which is mid-cheap. The areas that we like are going to be the most expensive areas in Mexico, unfortunately. But even though they're the most expensive areas in Mexico, doesn't mean you have to visit the touristy places. There's places that service the locals. There's restaurants that service the locals. There's supermarkets that service the locals. So definitely there are ways to save money. So based on kind of many, many years worth of metrics. These are kind of the repeated countries, and it's in no specific order. Mexico, whether it's the coastal locations or central Mexico. And did you know, central Mexico, there's an area outside of Guadalajara. Guadalajara is the second largest city in Mexico. So about an hour outside of that is Lake Chapala, which is the largest freshwater lake in Mexico. Next to Lake Chapala is a city called Ajijic. And then another city, which is about an hour, hour and a half outside of Guanajuato, which is a 4-hour distance from Guadalajara, called San Miguel de Allende. So Ajijic, Chapala, San Miguel de Allende, highest concentration of retired expats living there. Doesn't mean home ownership, but just expats living there. A lot of those are renting as well. And why are they living there? Climate is very good. It's very healthy air. You have a freshwater lake. You have established expat community. You have good healthcare because there are so many expats. So some of those things. Costa Rica, they are, I'll have to update the date. I forget what the date is. They are having an event for real estate professionals later this year, which is a CIPS, which is a Certified International Property Specialist class. And right before that, we are probably hoping to set up a trade mission. So anyone that is interested in Costa Rica, that would be the best time to go with a group of like-minded individuals. We'll basically be visiting developers, real estate agents, closing companies, and that so we can grind them down on all the questions we want and get the answer on how to purchase over there and how to do that. Let me get the exact date. So the CIPS clinic is July 31st to August 5th. So we're going to do the trip late June, last week of June. Panama. Panama is very Americanized. They use the US dollar. You're not going to have any foreign exchange risk. You're not going to lose any currency because you're using the US dollar. You have a lot of US companies over there. Panama Canal was built by the US. Why do you think the US likes Panama? So those that want something that has ease of entrance, Panama is always a great location, but with the Latin American flair. Colombia, with the O, a lot of people misspell it, but Colombia, always a good location. Portugal, we mentioned already. Spain, right next to Portugal. Philippines, Thailand, Vietnam, so Southeast Asia. And for Southeast Asia, you can get property starting at $50,000. Is that cool? Yes. Will they appreciate? Probably not. But if you can figure out how to get a cluster of those and run a short-term rental operation, that's lucrative. But that takes work. And then Dubai and Abu Dhabi. So those are all pretty good locations right now. So how do we go about finding a property and purchasing a property outside of the US? So outside of US and Canada, probably the two most advanced as far as organized real estate, a lot of these countries don't have a real estate licensing requirement. Is that scary? Yes. Your taxi driver can sell you a property. Is that scary? And what are they going to sell you? Whatever property they're going to make the most amount of money. So it's not going to be the best for you. So if you are going to be looking at global real estate, you want to make sure that you get yourself educated as much as possible before you start doing anything that's going to start making decisions on what you're doing. And you want to make sure that you're working with the correct professionals that are local. So because a lot of these countries do not have licensing, NAR, National Association of Realtors here in the US, they actually have a whole department called NAR Global that is set up basically to create these relationships and maintain these relationships, help them grow their practice and organization and real estate laws and licensing and MLS, and list goes on. So there's about 76 countries now, probably 120 bilateral partners. And what that means is some countries, they have multiple associations. France has multiple associations. Costa Rica has multiple associations. So what they want to happen with why they're spending so much effort is NAR basically has a code of ethics. So all of us here that are licensed in the US, we're NAR members. If we're in California, we're California Association of Realtor members, which I was just there earlier today at their winter meeting, so I had a big drive. They basically have it, so any of the members of the bilateral partners, they can opt in to join NAR. By doing that, they agreed to follow our code of ethics. Is that good? Yes. And one of those things is basically cooperation with agents. So if I have a buyer that's not in Mexico, because Mexico we're going to service ourselves, but I have a buyer somewhere else, I'm going to find someone that basically is one of these members because they're going to follow the rules. And hopefully, if you guys in the audience are going to be looking somewhere, you're going to find someone that is an IRM member, International Realtor member, or someone like myself that is working direct and compliant with the local rules. There is something called a Certified International Property Specialist. So that's the event that's happening in Costa Rica. That's why we're putting the trip right before this event, because we know we can have people go. There's about 4,000 to 4,500 globally. Most are going to be in the US and Canada. There's 52 countries that are pretty much have membership in it. And there's about 500 new members per year. So I mentioned earlier, you want to make sure that whoever you're working with, whether it's an agent, whether it's a salesperson, whatever the title may be, because it's going to differ by country. I used Mexico and Costa Rica for an example. So for Mexico, they have AMPI, which is the equivalent of National Association of Realtors. So anyone that is a member of AMPI, they basically have their own code of ethics. So that is the bare minimum of someone that if you're going to go buy directly in Mexico, not through our team, and you want to go look for someone, you want to find someone that is with AMPI. Next is if they're with FIAPSI. FIAPSI is the International Real Estate Federation. They have a chapter in Mexico. They have probably 35 members, so it's a very small membership. So anyone that is a part of that, you want to make sure that if they're one of those, that's good. And then for Costa Rica, you have two associations. You have CCCBR, and then you have Costa Rica Global Association of Realtors. So for Mexico, you have the two on the left. For Costa Rica, you have the two on the right. And then on the bottom row, you have FIAPSI Central America, which covers a lot of Latin America. So basically, if they're not Mexico and they basically want membership into FIAPSI, that's where they're located. So there potentially are members from Costa Rica in that. And then SILA, which is their local version of a regional real estate trade organization. So that encompasses pretty much all of the Latin American countries. FIAPSI, I am the founding president for FIAPSI Los Angeles, Southern California, which they killed the local council, so we don't have local councils anymore, but I was the founder for that. So what does that say? That was in the news September of last year. So this was more highlighting they're purchasing something across the border and doing a commute, which could be an hour, 2 hours in Mexico. So that was one of the highlights of that. This article came out. This is Mansion Global. Who knows what Mansion Global is? No one. Aw. So Mansion Global is the housing section of the Wall Street Journal. Everyone knows Wall Street Journal, yes? So Mansion Global is that entire section that's on real estate is Mansion Global. So Americans are buying international property all over. And this is from Marriott. Just last week. So the strong US dollar has US buyers flooding over excerpts. So you get the idea. So 90 net worth Americans actively looked at real estate overseas in 2022, according by survey data from Coldwell Banker Global. 67% of those surveyed already own residential property outside the US. Is that a strong metric? So that's mainly a survey to high net worth individuals. So for everyone here in the US, anywhere from 8% to 12% are thinking about or have already purchased something outside the US. So definitely it's something that's happening. Next excerpt. And this group basically live and invest overseas. They basically do very, very large scale seminars, mainly on Panama and Portugal, but they do have content on other ones. They're very pricey. They're like $5,000, $6,000 conferences. So we started noticing more high net worth individuals looking overseas as early as 2017, especially younger people who want to move overseas and investors. Many of the investors are looking for a vacation home that pays for itself through rental income. So something we kind of already identified. If you're going to buy something, make sure you're making at least the carry cost so you don't have to out of pocket every month or every year to cover costs. And then the last excerpt I took from that article. The top 3 locations US luxury buyers would consider when purchasing property abroad are Central America, North America, Canada, Mexico, and Asia. So we kind of knew that already. That was on the list I showed earlier. So everything is kind of a repetition from earlier data. I'm going to skip some stuff since I could go on forever and ever. So this is coming from this report, which came out in 2020. We're waiting for the new one, but this is from NAR, Global Alliance's International Residential Real Estate Business Survey. So NAR basically surveyed their international realtor members, which we mentioned earlier, are the international members not outside of the US, or they're going to be in Canada. And basically on the sections in Mexico, you can see little over 60% were purchasing something under $250,000. So definitely you have a price point that's very achievable for most people, whatever the goal is, whether it's a vacation home, whether it's an investment, whether it's to retire. And then most of the purchases are going to be all cash, unfortunately. And that number is actually the same for locals. And again, in Mexico, they don't really believe in residential mortgage type lending. It's kind of a new concept for them. So not every bank offers it, but they do that. You do see developer financing as one of them. So some developers, if they are larger, they have very good backing, they'll finance it for you, whatever the interest rate might be. What are the uses of the property? We already identified. Vacation home, number 1 use. Rent out, very big. Primary residence, so they're going to use it as a second home or to move in as a retirement directly. And then what are they buying? Single family detached, about half, and then condominium, about half, which is pretty standard. So what are the locations in Mexico that are getting the most traffic right now? So you can kind of see immediately south of us in green, you have Baja California. Everyone stay away from Tijuana, please. Tijuana scares me. But if you go farther into Baja California Sur, South Baja, you have cool locations, La Paz, Cabo. If you go basically to West Coast, you have Puerto Vallarta and everything around Puerto Vallarta, Riviera Nayarit. You have a new area called Puerto Escondido, which is outside of Oaxaca. And then I mentioned already, you have Ajijic, San Miguel de Allende. And then where we concentrate is this little section here, which is called the Yucatan Peninsula, which comprises of the state of Yucatan, which is where Mérida is located, where Chichen Itza is located, and Quintana Roo, which is basically Cancun all the way down to the Belize border, Chetumal. So what is the Riviera Maya? So you can kind of see it's composed of a lot of different cities here. So you have Cancun, where the airport is. You have Cozumel, which is an island off of Playa. Everyone know Cozumel? Cozumel does have its own airport. I used that last time. I'm not going to do it again because their customs only has 2 people. The line's very huge. You have Playa del Carmen. You have Tulum. So those 3 cities are the main cities that are kind of booming right now, have been booming. Cancun started in 1974, Playa started in 1998, and Tulum started in 2008. Playa del Carmen and Tulum have already started. Playa has topped as #1 rank before in the fastest growing cities, whoever does the rankings. Tulum is starting to rank in that survey as well. And this is what we call the path of progress. So you can kind of see everything started in Cancun, slowly goes down. If we go back to the previous map, if it keeps on going, not on this map, but down here there's another area called Bacalar, which is a freshwater lake. That will be the next location 10 to 15 years in the future. So, and they actually started construction, unlike our high-speed rail. But our high-speed rail actually is going to be started by basically a private party, just not the original route. So it's going to be basically from Inland Empire to Vegas is one route. And then at some point, if they do take on the rest of the project, will be that Northern California, Southern California route. So look at this. It goes from Cancun down to Playa to Tulum to Felipe Carrillo to Bacalar, which I mentioned earlier. Bacalar is going to be one of the next locations. On the other side, goes to Chichen Itza. Who's been to Chichen Itza? Aw, you guys don't travel enough, only one. Okay, everyone needs to go to Chichen Itza. And then Mérida. Mérida is the #1 ranked safest city in all of Latin America, whether that's Mexico, whether that's Central America, whether that's South America. #2 safest in all of America, so all of North, Central, South America. So Mérida is a very good location recently. So we'll scroll through some potential projects. A lot of people like to be near it because that's where all the tourists are. So if you can, usually you can rent for a higher amount. A kind of a very simplified map of Playa del Carmen. So Fifth Avenue is this red strip here. It's built up to about right here right now, which is 52nd, 54th. The street numbering basically is 2468 even numbers, goes into the hundreds over here. So at some point it'll get out here development-wise. From the beach, usually you're going to go 1st, 5th, 10th, every 5. It's built like a grid. It's very easy to find things. You don't need a car. You can walk. From the main highway here, that's going to be probably 45th Street. You can walk to the beach within 15 minutes, most of those locations. Can you walk to the beach from where you are now? Probably not. So you don't even have to be beach. You can walk to the beach in most of these locations. If you're across the freeway, not very easy to walk to the beach, unfortunately. Up here in more of the north area, this is Mayacoba. Across the street here, across the highway, we do have a project that we feel is pretty good. It's called Ciudad Mayacoba. So Mayacoba City is high-end Mayacoba. If you wanted to buy something in there, 1/4 timeshare will be 1.5 million. About 5,000 to 7,000 square foot villa that's on the water, going to cost you about 4 to 5 million. So very expensive. They have brands in there: Fairmont, Andaz, Rosewood, very, very high end. Across the highway has its own Mayacoba Country Club. So it has another golf course. And then the rest of it basically is residential and mixed use. And it's basically built out like a mini city, which we like. So it doesn't matter that it's a little bit farther out from Central Playa, but it's not that far. 7-minute drive to Central Playa, so it's not that far. But out here in front, they're building a huge mall. Costco is in talks. I don't know how far they've gotten on that, but Costco is in talks to basically have the anchor location for that. There'll be a movie theater and then a lot of shops. The project that we are representing or authorized to sell is this corner here. It's called Jardines Gardens, and is probably the cheapest, best bang for the buck you can get right now. So it's basically going to be higher density. It's not going to be good for short-term rental, unfortunately. So anyone thinking short-term rental, this is not it. But this is what you can get. You can get a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom flat starting at $60,000. 2 bedrooms for $60,000. That's very cheap. And they have 3-bedroom models also. So 3-bedroom you can get starting around $90,000, $100,000 range. So these are good for second homes or for retirement later, or buying now, holding for another 5 years or so for them to finish the rest of. They'll be very similar to the US, so it'll be usually anywhere from 200 to 350 range. So the entire community, which we outlined here, it's going to have a hospital, so name brand hospital satellite. It's going to have a name brand international school. It's going to have a name brand college satellite campus. It's going to have a medical wellness center, which translates to plastic surgery, if you don't know what that means, so that medical tourism. And it's going to have an outdoor amphitheater. Outdoor amphitheater is going to be accessible from inside and from outside. It's going to be the first outside amphitheater in Playa. So they're going to be able to do outdoor concerts and larger types events like that. So it's definitely a great area.
I'm sorry, I gotta add, why not short-term rental?
It's too far away from all the amenities right now. So for someone to live there on a short-term rental, they need to rent a car, which most people that are vacationing don't want to rent a car, deal with it. For us, we rent a car, not everyone else. Yeah, yeah. But discuss with the lawyer first, because there's a lot of liability issues basically doing stuff like that. What the opportunity was basically was this unit here, so the penthouse unit. Almost, actually it should be over, so over 2,000 square feet, over 1,000 square feet each floor, and ocean views. That's a block and a half from water. I took from my phone, so you can kind of see the ocean in the background. This is the studio on the penthouse level. That's the private plunge pool with the ocean in the background. This is their satellite photo of the rooftop deck, which is 2-level. The floor plan, so you can see how they do stuff. Usually, what we like, they build stuff what's called a lock-off. I mean, you can lock specific doors, and you can now turn it into a duplex or a triplex and rent it like that. So depending if you wanted to try to rent it out as an entire unit, which some people don't want to deal with it, that's what they do. But not everyone is going to spend all that money for extra space that they might not have people for. So for instance, you can lock the door, rent first floor on its own as a 2-bedroom unit with ocean view from the terrace. You can rent the penthouse, probably the same price because it has a pool and a better view from the deck. And now you have potentially 1.5 to 2x of the income if you rented it altogether, which you might have vacancies. So definitely that's a potential we like to do. On the map, we mentioned the orange line, that's 5th Avenue. This is at 52nd Street, which is, like I mentioned, a lot of developers are built out there that direction already. Previously, they were at CTM. And then I'll show a couple examples for Tulum. If it will start, is it going to start? Uh-oh, what happened? Okay. So that's Caribbean Ocean, like I mentioned. That's one of the reasons everyone flocks to Tulum. When the water's clear, that is the beach you get. You get basically white marble sand pretty much, clear water, turquoise blue where it's deeper. And all of that basically has a lot of water activities. So if you like to boat, if you like to fish, if you like to swim, if you like to snorkel, if you like to dive, all of those are doable. You have beach clubs. So restaurant that's on the beach, very high end usually. You're renting a space, basically either a cabana, a day bed to basically use while you're there. Usually there's a minimum spend, so be careful because some of them are $200 entry. There is one that is a little bit outside of main Tulum. Everyone knows Pablo Escobar. Pablo Escobar had a villa, an investment group purchased it, turned it into a very, very high end. So $200 entry, that's that. Casa Malca. That's not the picture, but Casa Malca is the one. What's that? You have tens of thousands of people flocking to Tulum around New Year's, which is a big one, and then spread out probably up until March, end of March. So you have huge music. This is why Tulum has the draw going. Young people that have money, digital nomads that might stay longer, but they don't want to buy something because they don't want to be locked down to something. And you have in for a weekend and willing to spend $500,000 if the property is good. Who's seen this before? So this is the most famous sculpture in Tulum. This was a byproduct of an event called Art With Me. Who knows Burning Man here in the US? So Art With Me is kind of like Burning Man, a little bit more tame, but in Tulum. But this was one of the public art pieces that was created during that. Used to be out in front of Ahau, A-H-A-U. They moved it to the back, and they now have a sculpture park. So that's pretty cool. So there's a sculpture park on the beach now. But that was one of the main draws before. And then you have cenotes. So a cenote basically is an underground river that carved out a cave over thousands of years of eroding. So now some of them, they're basically enclosed caves. Some of them are open air. And these are all basically pay for entry, unless you find one on your own, but pay for entry usually. And if you speak Spanish, say you're a resident, because it's half off, whatever we get. I can't pass for Mexican, FYI. I can try as hard as I want, not gonna happen. But these are all basically swimmable. Some have fish, some you can snorkel, some you can dive. They're all different, they're all beautiful. Thousands of them spread out across Quintana Roo and Yucatan. So for Tulum, you have a couple main areas. The main highway, 307, this is what you drive. Basically, you go north, about 45 minutes, that's Playa del Carmen. Another 45 minutes, you're in Cancun again. So from Cancun, about an hour and a half to 2 hours to get to Tulum. You have the hotel zone. This is where all the beach clubs are. This is the original beach access road, Avenida Coba. You have a secondary one that just opened up half a year ago, Avenida Cococan. Cococan was one of the previous kings of the Mayan culture, so you'll see a lot of Cococan on everything name-wise. And then on the other side of Avenida Coba, you have what's called the public beach area. There are beach clubs that are exclusive, but the public beach is over here, which you don't need to pay money to use. In between, label number 3, Aldea Zama, which is Mayan for Sunshine Village. And you have Selva Zama, which is down here, which is Mayan for Forest Village. Aldea Zama basically is probably the highest level as far as master plan goes. Everything inside is paved, electrical cabling, fiber optic, all the internet stuff, all underground. All the roads are paved. There's greenery that's left intact, so it's not just going to be thousands of houses like in Irvine that you see. you have green space that's protected, forest space. That's going to cost a little bit more because the developers, when they got the land has a premium. If you're on this side, number 5, La Valletta, which used to be Region 9, and then right under La Valletta, probably to about here, Region 15. You can get stuff probably about 10, 15% cheaper if you were to compare a same type home to a same type home in Aldea Zama, because the roads are not paved. You have dirt roads. The roads belong to the government. They say they're going to correct it. You know how that's going to go. It's going to be 10, 20 years before something happens. So if you have a Jeep, fine, because you have potholes that might be a foot deep, but some people like that. So, but there are some good buildings out there, but I'm just saying the overall surroundings, they're very different. So the first project I wanted to highlight, this is called
We are connected.
Side of downtown area.
Focus your energy on the essence of life. Just like humans, Ocean Tulum will have over 60% water. Thanks to the architectural design, we will be able to integrate our main element within the complex, a concept surrounded and connected by an amazing swim-up central pool, a complete residential condo that exceeds reality with all its amenities, restaurant, spa, kids club, fitness area, co-working center, private parking, commercial area, and much more. Each unit will have its own.
So fire pit. So the inside style here, this is what I nicknamed Tulum style. A lot of people use that term also. Of the local wood, which is going to be parota. And that's very equivalent to kind of what we. So it's a very hard, dense wood, mostly water resistant. Doesn't mean waterproof, water resistant. You do have to upkeep. And that's what they're trying to keep sustainable for whatever they're chopping down. If they are sustainable companies, they're basically taking that wood and converting it into usable lumber. Same for furniture. A lot of furniture is made with that same wood. You see a lot of stone, so that's all going to be travertine or marble type stone. That would be very expensive to do here in the US, but that's all locally mined, very cheap. Asia, you see entire walls, like this whole entire wall might be covered with marble. Stuff that would be impossible to do here in the US just because of cost, but that's because it's all local. An idea kind of what the insides look like. So these ones come furnished about $100,000 for the studio or one bedroom. Very, very cheap. And they have 2-bedroom models. This 2-bedroom model is what I call a micro 2-bedroom lock-off. It's very small, but it can be separated into a 2-bedroom lock-off, used as 2 separate units. So if someone was looking mainly as investment, maybe you'll visit it a couple of times, if ever. That's a moneymaker. That's about $160,000. Usual price for a 2-bedroom in most of Tulum, without furniture. These come with furniture, so you're saving $10,000 to $15,000 right away. Average price for 2-bedroom, usually going to be about $200, $250 to $300 range, depending how close to water and upgrade level. Very good price. And then what's cool with this is it's not on the main street, so it's not going to be super loud. It's one street in. But right across from the main street, they're building a new La Isla. Who's been to Cancun? I'm sure most have been to Cancun. So Cancun, middle of hotel zone, there's a La Isla. Yes, that's the main mall. Half of La Isla is kind of like South Coast Plaza. You have Louis Vuitton, you have Fendi, you have Gucci. That's what they're doing here. So that's going to make this area kind of more gentrified in a sense. That's the goal. No guarantees. And then the last one I wanted to highlight, this is where we have 2. Rooftop pools with a pool bridge, so you can swim. And they have that in other buildings already. So anyone that wants to go down, I can arrange a visit. They'll show you one of the other buildings that has that. It's pretty cool. So over here, you can get studios and 1-bedrooms starting at $160,000. And then the 2-bedroom starting at $295,000. And the 2-bedroom is a lock-off. So main entry here, second entry here. You can lock this door here. This right here is Aldea Zama. They were supposed to develop the entire falling out. So this got split to one of them, which was Inmobilia. The rest of this, which was a little bit larger, got split to the other developer. I don't know who it is. But the Amira District project is right here. And you have a 300-meter driveway that goes to the main hotel zone right there. 6-minute walk to main hotel zone. You can't beat that. Right across the street here, this is Quarry. This is Papaya Playa. Anyone want to open their phone right now, see how much the rate to book a room at Papaya Playa is right now? Just for fun, because I saw it, but hopefully it's still the same numbers. But let's see if Angela will get a number for sometime this week or next week. Oh, okay. So because we're going to be going down in about 2 weeks, so we're kind of figuring out where we're staying. So we see kind of a big list of everything. Papaya Playa, not 67 for a room, one night. I believe that's event going on at Papaya Playa. It's one of the ones that host the music events. So, but this project is kind of diagonal across the main road from Papaya Playa. Do you think you can charge $600 for your unit, which is going to be twice the size? Yeah.
Let's say somebody said, okay, I want to buy
obstacles, you're going to have a lot of competition. Right now, first phase, 250 units. So you have 250 other people. Position, usually you're not going to have any issues. Basically, if you have, they're ready to sell. Depending how you want to structure the offer, again, we mentioned they don't have any construction financing. So if you want to pay a larger amount up front, they lower the price. So that 160,000 number, that's with the accelerated payment plan. So you're putting 30% down to start the offer, start the process. You have 6 months after that to pay another 50%. So 50% split out over 6 months. And then a week before closing, the rest of the 20%. That's what they have laid out, how their sales numbers are doing. Seller's market, buyer's market. If it starts to shift, buyer can add certain requests. Builder, developer. Yeah. Yeah. And most of the purchases are going to be similar. So you're going to be putting 30% down. That's usually what starts. I mentioned earlier, if you can get a sweetheart deal, meaning you don't have to pay anything except that 70% at closing, that's what you want. Because if you can divest your money in between for 2 years and get 5–10% earnings on it, why not? If you want to try to get a discount, and for this, if you are doing that, you get an 18% discount. So that's what we're doing. We figured 18% discount's better than us trying to do something else. And then that's that driveway. So this is the front of building. And then I'll go through this real quick since I know a lot of content. I think everyone's overloaded. So what if you don't want to buy a condo? Or what if you don't want to buy a house? And yes, you can buy houses also. Houses usually not going to be as central because you don't have enough land to do big projects. You'll have one-offs, but you won't have like a whole community. So usually if you want to buy a villa, it's going to be opposite side of that highway we mentioned. And if you're opposite side of the highway, you're farther away. So unless you have something very unique going for you, your short-term rental earnings are going to be impacted. Your occupancy is going to be impacted. So Ciudad Madeiras, which translates to Wood City. I'm not sure how they came up with the name. My rep doesn't either. We make fun of it all the time. So they're the biggest land developer. So they basically do big master plans all over Mexico. And the two that we're helping them push because it's in existing markets for us is one is in Merida, about 20 minutes from water. Let's see. Not on this map, unfortunately. And then one is in Cancun. This is about 40 minutes outside of central Cancun. I've already asked them, are they going to be providing shuttle service? They've taken the suggestion, no guarantees. So it is going to be a more exclusive neighborhood outside of Cancun. They are going to have their own beach club that is in Cancun Hotel Zone. And that's going to be exclusive for the owners and then the owners' guests. So if you are going to be using it as short-term rental, your guests are allowed to use a beach club as well. Basically, they build giant projects. So these are going to be 20,000 to 35,000 lots in the project. Pretty much 1,000 to 1,500. Lot size minimum, about 1,500 square feet, up to as big as you want, basically by combining lots. But if you combine lots, you have lot amount times HOA. So you're going to increase your HOA also because you have a larger lot. What is cool about this partner is they have a cool financing option. If you don't want to put anything down, zero down, and as low as $100 per month, and you can own a piece of land in Cancun or Merida or Querétaro or León or San Miguel de Allende or wherever else they're building. So two options. One, someone that wants to buy and hold and at some point build something, good option. Because you're buying it cheap. You're not going to get that cheaper anywhere else. Overall cost is about $25,000 to $30,000 if you're thinking of overall cost. But the way that they have it structured, same as if you're buying a car. You're buying on your monthly payment. You're not buying on the price. Other option is they have a 3-year development cycle, same as the condo, same as the houses. You can flip it at 2.5 years. And a lot of these properties, and they have a lot of sales data to back it, basically increase in value if it's basically bought in that first phase when they offered it, not somewhere in the middle in the first phase, will increase in value anywhere from 50% to 100%. So if you purchase something that the land value was $25,000 and you sold it 2.5 years later at $35,000, whatever, but you've only been paying minimum payments, you just made a lot of money. So they have a lot of buyers doing that, basically. This is their beach club in Cancun. Being built right now, it's not built yet. And then this is the location in Merida. So right here, you drive about 20 minutes, you're on the water here. Actually, I like that one better than Cancun because. And then that's the master plan for one in Merida. The houses kind of are built like this. So these are the ones that kind of are representative, kind of Mexican modern, I like to say, because that's usually what you see in a lot of the villa type communities. It's easy to build, it's cheap. Just so you guys know, the building cost, just for average level, anywhere from probably $75 to $100 per square foot. Very cheap. If you want California right now, yeah, $250, $350 in between range. With permitting. So, pretty cool thing. So do we have any questions on that before we get into how to purchase, because I know there's a lot of questions. Everyone's thinking, what's going on? I see a lot of cool stuff, but how do we do it? So there's a lot of bad information that's gone around. I call it fake news. That's kind of a trendy word. So a lot of fake news that's gone around last many, many years. So everyone's heard, I can't buy in Mexico as a foreigner. Raise your hand if you've heard that. Everyone's heard, you can only lease land in Mexico. Who's heard that? So yeah, misconception. So those are both untrue. So can a foreigner purchase the real estate in Mexico? Yes. What kind of title do I get when purchasing in Mexico? And are there financing programs available? So those are the three questions mainly we get. So the problem that confuses everyone is Mexico basically has what's called a restricted zone. What you see in red is coastal. What you see in yellow is national border. So within 100 kilometers, which is about 60 miles, and within 50 kilometers, which is about 30 miles, you cannot own that directly in your name as a foreigner. How many in the room are ethnically Mexican? So if you have parents that are still alive and can sign off and get you a Mexican passport, do that. You can hold the title direct as a Mexican passport holder. So something to think about. So what is the way to basically buy as a foreigner? So starting in the 1970s, the president at that time saw that there was a lot of demand for foreign investment into Mexico. They didn't want to turn that away. You have people wanting to spend money, dump money, invest money. Why are you going to turn it away? What we saw previously here, this is in the Mexican Constitution. They're not going to change the Constitution. That's very difficult to do. So they made a new policy, which is simply translates to as a bank trust. So if I'm buying a property, that title is going to be held by the bank. The bank works for me, so they can't do anything bad to it. We pay them a fee to set it up. We pay them a fee every year to maintain it. So what is the question that comes up with that given fact I just gave you? No one has the question? Okay, that's a good question. So the fee as closing cost to set it up, which includes the first year, is usually going to be between $2,000 to $2,500. And that's to basically set it up. Any of the big banks in Mexico can do it. So if you have a bank that you like, by all means, you can request it. If not, they'll use the ones they know that can get it done. No. Every year after, $500 about. $400 to $500 plus tax. So the question I was going after was, what happens if the bank goes bankrupt? What happens if the bank goes away? What happens if the bank is no more? What happens, yada, yada. Very similar to how our living trust here is in the US. Once it's created, you can't kill it. It's a separate entity. But it needs to be maintained. So what you do is you take it from bank A that's now defunct, move it to bank B. You probably have to pay a transfer fee. Bank B is now your managing bank to manage it. So the second part of this, why everyone is confused, and it says specifically down here, the fideicomiso is not a lease. So you own the title. Every 50 years, you need to renew it. You can renew forever and ever and ever, and your heirs can renew forever, ever, ever. Basically, when you set up the fideicomiso, you can directly name your replacement beneficiary. So that's your whoever you want it to go to when you pass away. That will supersede anything that you have set up here in the US, whether it's a living trust, whether it's a living will, whatever you have here. Unless you purchase through an LLC, that's different. Whoever the LLC ownership goes to, that's who it's going to. But if you're just doing it directly in your name, that's how it works.
If you have the ability to have a national representative, and rather than using it as, can they buy it as a family member and then name it to business in the trust? So that way it would allow for an investment pool of non-national.
I would advise against doing that, because usually what happens is Jose, who's going to help you do that, is going to get a bright idea and say, I'm going to keep it. Angela's not going to be able to do anything, which is true. Same thing happens. So the other way to purchase, if you want to hold the title directly, and you are going to be purchasing multiple properties, multiple meaning probably 4 or 5 or more, or a commercial property, so a commercial property, a hotel, a big piece of land, you can buy using a Mexican corporation. You can hold the title in the Mexican corporation. If you have a Mexican corporation, there's a lot of fees associated with Mexican corporation. So if you only own one property or two properties, those fees are gonna kind of negate whatever benefits you just got from doing that. So it depends. Mexican corporation, 2 people, does not have to be Mexican citizens or residents. As long as there's 2 people, then it's okay.
An LLC, bank, that's the way to go. Right?
So what we're doing now with the new set we're purchasing is we're purchasing using a US-based LLC as the owner of the bank trust. And the reason for that is we're basically going to be doing crowdfunding type stuff with new properties and existing properties at some point. So we want to have that flexibility to be able to change LLC ownership in between. And it's easier to sell your LLC than trying to sell the property and doing the transfer of the trust, because the transfer of the trust costs a lot more than just selling your LLC outright. And that's how most of the commercial buildings are sold, unless they're stupid when they set it up. Okay. So last main question we get, is there financing available? There is. It's very expensive. Not many banks do it. Most of the financing is going to be available on West Coast Mexico, but it's more case by case, I'm going to say. The 2 that we have used with our buyers, they're both private equity firms here in the US that basically have Mexican operations. So they're taking their private equity, investing it to basically fund loans in Mexico. Interest rates, so this is one of them. Interest rates 8.99% to 13.5%. Do you think you can do a cash out refi or a HELOC cheaper than that? How many of us in the room did a cash out refi or a HELOC in 2021 when rates were as low as 3 or under? Oh, no one else caught on. Oh, Kevin did, yay. So that's usually what we recommend to our buyers to do, is it's cheaper to figure out the money here in the US and leverage it that way than trying to do that. But last ditch effort, if they really, really want to do it, they can't do anything here in the US, you can do that, it's just going to be pricey. The other problem is that's going to be full doc. So self-employed, which is me, I wouldn't qualify for that. So definitely there are some nuances.
If somebody came to you, like all of these various projects that we're talking about, but specifically the ones in Mexico, somebody came to you, they're like, look, I have the money, it's going to be US funds, 10 to 12%. If I came to you and said, that's what my money is going to be costing me, can you make this cash flow for me? You can find places where you would definitely be able to save.
That would get close, yeah. That would be a higher chance of doing it. Definitely there's no guarantees, but we would be able to find properties that we know have the higher occupancy rates and basically better locations. Right now, basically studios and 1 bedrooms, those are the better options. 1, they're cheaper to acquire. 2, direct competition for hotels. So people.
In those areas where you can show like, look, this area is booming and we have like optimistic prospects for it.
Nothing built out yet, but if you look at AirDNA, for instance, AirDNA basically analyzes Airbnb stats. That's one of the sources we use to look at stuff. But to give an example, if you want to know a real world thing, so ours that we purchased in 2020, which we purchased at the beginning of COVID. Oh no, COVID didn't scare us. Mexico was open pretty much a week after COVID started, so they weren't scared of it either. They were just very good at enforcing kind of the health protocols and the safety protocols. So we purchased our 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom lock-off unit. I mentioned lock-off at $216,000. That was cheaper than what was on the paper, so I'm assuming someone defaulted. So yay for us, we got something like that. And that's how we picked up the other 2 we have reserved now. Someone defaulted, so otherwise we wouldn't get ocean view units. That basically, we fired, it was a hotel condo originally. So what that means is the developer designed it, they basically designed it as a boutique hotel, so a small boutique hotel. They had a hotel administrator, property manager, pretty much in place already at that point. And we were fine with that, basically 100% passive. We don't have to do anything. Every quarter, get reporting, get a deposit. And we were getting about, probably about 7 to 7.5% per year annualized from the cash flow. So no complaints. Last year, they did a horrible job. The ownership fired them. So Q4, we basically were converting it to a short-term rental, which went live. Basically, January was our first booking, or December 31st, New Year's. Prime, again, I mentioned, because that's where the people are there partying. And depends if you want people that are that, and they trashed our unit, but we got Airbnb to pay it, so payoff. But based on that, bookings we have right now until end of April, we're basically over 10% cash flow on that. The property conservatively is worth $280,000 now. If you're kind of optimistic, some might say it's closer to 300. So that's between a 15 to 20% increase per year since we purchased it.
Well, wait, you said did you buy the unit in cash or like?
Cash.
So when you say 10%, what does that mean? I mean, there's no cost.
10% based on purchase price. ROI, cash on cash.
Okay.
Cash on cash. Because you can't leverage it there. So if you look at the blended with the appreciation built in, you're looking at over 20% returns easily. But if you're looking just at cash flow, then yeah, you have to be very nitpicky what you're looking at. You have to basically find the correct property manager, because a lot of the property managers down there suck. And that's that. Yeah. Yeah. So right now, basically I have a local team that's basically doing the turnovers, doing the inspections, doing inventory, and doing guest check-ins. Very cheap for that. We're managing the calendar and guest communications on our own, which is not too much work since we do that for doing real estate also.
Do you have like a property management company, or are you just doing that that's built into your?
So for that, that's at most costing about 10%. If you're going to hire a third party, it's going to be anywhere from 20 to 30% of bookings, plus consumables and capital expenditures. With a partner, we are looking to form a property management company down there, but that will take at least half a year before that happens. That's good. We can speed it up. We can speed it up, yeah, definitely. We already have 2 people down there on the ground. Basically, my partner's one of the bigger property managers based out of Las Vegas. So he has a huge background in hospitality and property management. And I have a huge background basically in Mexico. So we're kind of figuring out a partner. There's a third partner who's going to be part of that. Basically, they have a third-party booking platform, not Airbnb, that has a very, very high occupancy rate booking. And basically, we're just trying to figure out what that kind of formula looks like to work together. Not Airbnb.
Is it a U.S. company or?
US, yeah. So they're operating in Florida, I believe, and Chicago right now. Like many, many hundreds of units.
Okay,
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah, no problem. It's a good question. So I did a graphic, pre-sales versus resale. So we talked about pre-sales already. You get a cheaper price, it's brand new. Options. Resale property, you know what you're getting right away. So, and you can close on a resale property within probably 30 to 45 days. So you can close on it very quickly. Problem is, usually there's going to be some deferred maintenance with it because 1, they are usually a vacation rental property. So there's a lot of high traffic, high wear and tear. 2, very high humidity area. So if things weren't maintained correctly, you'll have other issues. But so Costa Rica, we'll just touch on very, very briefly, since we're not an expert, but it is going to be one of our expansion areas once we have Mexico firmed up. Go ahead.
The project that you were just talking about, if somebody came to you and they're like, no, we want some pre-sale units. But we don't have any crew down here. Can you help us find a crew to just develop this over the next few years? Is that something that we could figure out?
Yeah, we can discuss. Everything's doable. It's just a matter of how much time and how much startup capital is available to basically develop that out. Yeah. So Costa Rica has developed a lot earlier than Mexico has. I want to say maybe 20 years ago was its prime. So it started before 20 years ago. Anyone that picked up any property basically along this coast, so Guanacaste and then Yaco Beach area is growing right now, they're pretty well off because you can basically have a house on the beach looking at water, which you can't really do in Mexico. At least where we specialize in Quintana Roo, a lot of the waterfront lots, they're basically protected in a different sense. So kind of how the American Indians were kind of a special case and the government had to kind of apologize and give them land. Something like that happened. So back in the day, Mexican government gave specific families bunches of land. And at that point, unknown areas, and Tulum Beach, unfortunately, was one of those unknown areas. So a lot of that is what's called ejido. I don't know what that means, but ejido. So what happens is, yes, you can buy it. Yes, you can close on it. Yes, a notary will sign off. But there'll be a big disclosure in it. And what that disclosure is we're going to sell it to you. Seller's getting their money. Buyer paid for it. Everything besides this thing. So it's like a title policy exclusion in a sense. We're selling it to you with that exclusion, that disclosure. And what that means is at some point, you're going to lose it. 50 years, 100 years, 150 years. Someone's going to come by and say, I own 1/1000th of that and sue you. And they'll have a right to sue you. And you're going to have to end up settling, whether that's paying them a lot of money to go away and basically sign off their rights. And at that case, someone else will come along because now they just opened the floodgate, or you need to give them the property. So Costa Rica, on the other hand, you can buy outright. Costa Rica, there's only a couple of zones that I know of that you cannot own directly, and those are usually marina type zones and anything around kind of military installments. Everything else is up for grabs. Right now, the best parts to invest, non-Pacific side, because it has not been developed yet. But that's going to take probably 5, 15, whatever amount of years for it to get to whatever value it needs. But you can see from the growth of Pacific side what the potential would be on that side. The same kind of process, minus the bank trust, basically to purchase in Costa Rica. So basically you would have a notary. Notary in Latin America basically is a super attorney. They're appointed by the state. They're the ones that actually sign off, signing a title from the seller to the buyer. There's a closing company that's hired by the buyer to review the documents. If you skip that step, you can pay extra. Notary, notario, they can do that also. Probably not a good idea. I always joke, there's 1,000 bad ways or unsafe ways to buy stuff in Mexico, so don't do it. That's one of them, is basically just buying it direct through the notario without having your own representation. You wouldn't buy a property here in the US and leave escrow out of it, would you? Or leave a closing attorney out. So why would you do it there? So same thing. Basically, you would put a down payment in, go through the process. Closing would be similar, same thing. They don't really have financing in Costa Rica either. There used to be a US-based private equity fund out of Texas that was funding stuff. Same thing, it was 10% plus interest rates, so very, very high. But very, very similar, just a different location. And that is my presentation. Any questions? Yeah. Go ahead.
Could you go over one more time what you just said about Mexico and certain areas of land where
Yeah.
50 years or 100 years and something's
So basically the beach. Mainly Tulum. There's some spots in Playa also.
okay.
But everything that is on the beach side is pretty much all land lease through one of those. You can't own it ever. Okay, yeah. On the opposite side of that beach street, some of the areas you can own. We do have a project that is one of our partners. I believe it's kind of around this area here. And it is correctly deeded, meaning it's not part of the ejido boundary. Right on the ocean, very expensive. So the oceanfront row of condos, $2 million. Second row, starting 800,000 to 1.5 million. And these are 1,200 to 1,500 square feet, but very exclusive because you cannot on the water. And that was one of the reasons we chose where we're purchasing right now, because it's the closest you can buy without having a title risk. Yeah. 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 All right.
So if you do finance, what's the typical down payment requirement?
30% usually. So they'll finance 60, 70% usually. Yeah. Huh?
Along with the financing, if you do take one of the higher interest financing terms, that's not part of the down payment to put the deposit on pre-development.
No.
That's only for.
Yep. So basically what will happen if you finance, because sometimes there's a separation delivery when you get the actual. Doesn't mean you're not getting it, doesn't mean you're getting scammed, doesn't mean something fishy is going on. You'll get a certified copy when you sign it. It usually means they did not finish what's called a condo regime. So if you have a very, very good developer, that's all done and whatever. You'll basically close and you'll get everything within a month. If you're most developers, they're basically working on everything concurrently because they have so much going on. So once it closes, you get delivery, you get legal usage of it, you get a certified copy that everything's signed, that the developer turned the unit over to you, pending this last piece, which is that condo regime usually. Condo regime kind of is like a final condo map. So you're taking development, final tract map, final condo map. So basically that's what it is. So waiting for that to complete. Once that completes, basically they'll send it over to the regional or the national registry, registro. Once that records, huge final copy goes back to the notary. Notary sends you the actual paper copy of it. Or if you're there, you pick it up. Very, very thick, very, very comprehensive. There's never ever gonna be a question as to who owns it because everything is so documented in that package. Like a deed we get here in the US, usually 2 pages. Over there, like 100 pages. Everyone's identity, how the lot was acquired originally, who got it, who split it, who was the notary that did this, who was the notary that did that, who was a legal representative, what are your boundaries, and the boundaries basically 1 meter this direction, turn right, 5 meters this direction, so basically measuring your condo that way, and then basically all the legal description that goes with it. So everything is very concise. Minus the one that had the very nice rooftop pool. That one we were trying to purchase. that's the one I wanted. But no, we have access to hundreds of different projects. So what my team basically has been doing the last pretty much 4 or 5 years is making relationships with the bigger developers, kind of watching what they're doing. Some of them were actually going to their projects that we know they built 2 or 3 years ago, seeing how they're kept up. We actually fired a partner last year because it fell to crap. And they claim they're the largest developer in Tulum. So, and they do build a lot of units, but they're just building them fast and don't care. And that's not what you want. You want something that's quality. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But yeah, so we have access to tons of stuff. It just depends what the specific criteria is, and then we can kind of start piecing together kind of a sample deck of what matches. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we were going to do one end of this month. We ended up not being able to because we're still mid-peak season. So because no one reserved, Sunny wanted to go originally, I think, but we didn't get that set up, unfortunately, in time. We will be doing one in August, which is not, and we'll basically miss the summer weather and then right before hurricane season. So that'll be the bigger one. If there's anyone that has kind of a more immediate need, we're basically doing smaller group trips based on what the people want to see, basically, so customized trips. And it'll be cheaper to do it that way because we're not pulling out all the bells and whistles and trying to smooth them. Fall in love with this because you already have interest, so we don't need to do that. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Any other questions? Cool. Thank you for the opportunity. Like I said, it's a passion.
Okay, thanks everyone for coming us via Zoom or YouTube, Facebook. I'm not sure what's going on, but thank you for coming. We appreciate you, and thank you, Spencer. That was amazing. Great information. All right, everybody, have a good night.
Can we get a